I want to make a short video on this topic because it's something that I see more and more people doing. I think it's like a later millennial trend slash Generation Z trend, and that's the gap year. This means that you finish your undergraduate degree, and then let's say you want to go to grad school, but you decide I'm going to take a gap year, and then I'm going to start applying to grad schools while I'm not actively in school, or you may see this with someone might do the same after they get their master's degree, or some might decide that with a PhD. It's like, I finished my PhD, that was a lot of work, I'm just going to take a gap year and apply to jobs during this year, as opposed to trying super hard towards the end of your PhD. So I think this pertains mostly to undergraduates. I think this is where it's more common. High school students are doing it too, and I think I would actually encourage most high school students to do something like that, if I'm being completely honest. But for undergraduates, think long and hard about what the gap year is going to do for you specifically. So a successful gap year is one where you have developed yourself professionally without committing to a next step, so to speak. So one example is if you're able to become a tech worker here at Trinity in the research labs in the year before going to graduate school. That is a good use for a gap year because it enables you to work full time, maybe get a lot more work finished on your project. You could probably get it to a publishable part near the end of that year, or have a paper published as you're submitting graduate school applications, or going through the graduate school acceptance process. So that works out very well for you. Another good use for a gap year is if, let's say that you're deciding you want to apply to graduate schools, but instead you get a job at a company. And you work at that company for 1 year, or maybe you have multiple gap years. I've spoken before in a previous video, and this is also a great use for gap years because you give yourself professional experience that could get you ahead, let's say in your next job, or when you apply to jobs, you're going to go back to grad school and then you apply to jobs after grad school that will benefit you then. Or you might just decide, heck, I'm happy where I am, so I'm going to keep doing this. That's great too. What you should not do for a gap year is get into your senior year and then decide, I'm kind of overwhelmed by this grad school process, so I'm not going to apply to grad schools this year, but I'm also not going to apply to industry jobs either. Or if I do start applying to industry jobs, it'll be like 2 months before graduation. This is not a good gap year. That's just called being unemployed. And if you decide knowingly that you just want to take a year off afterward and just work full-time at Target while just making some money and recovering from your undergraduate experience, this is also a very poor use of a gap year because you haven't really gotten yourself ahead professionally. And now when you start applying to those jobs, they look at your experience and they wonder, okay, why is there a 1 year difference here? And it's one thing if the job market is tough and you're applying to 5 jobs a day, and you're actively interviewing, but you haven't found something yet. That's in something entirely different from, I decided myself to delay this process. I think that's really irresponsible, and you should not be doing it. You're really shooting yourself in the foot if this is the approach you're taking. So to recap on this, gap year is good if it gets you ahead professionally, if you're actually doing industry or research work that is going to benefit you in either industry or grad school. A gap year is not a good choice if you just want to take time off. Make sure that you're doing something productive. I guess another productive thing would be something like if you wanted to join the Peace Corps for a year or two. I don't think people would look down too much on that because you're doing a public service. Okay, so apart from Peace Corps, I don't think there's really a good reason to just delay your process interminably so you can, say, take it easy for a year. That's not going to benefit you at all.